Canada is a country. Waves of people came to this country, were welcomed by the folks who have lived here for millennia, the First Nation. And built this society with waves of people fleeing religious persecution, fleeing tyranny, fleeing to try and build a better life for themselves here than they had back home. Whether it's folks fleeing from world wars or fleeing from civil wars, these people always want the same thing: to be able to live in peace, to raise their families, create a better future for themselves and their communities. And that is what generations created, this extraordinary diverse society we have. Now, Canada remains one of the only countries in the world where citizens are, by and large, positively inclined. And one of the reasons we are that way is because Canadians have confidence in our position.
MKCANADA. That's what it feels like right now, doesn't it? How you guys feeling tonight? I'm Andreas. Hello.
Not too bad. How are you doing?
So this is BurnEye. I never can do this. It's so hard. BurnEye, how are you? Is it working now? Because I can't tell if it's reversed or something anyway. Is it still wrong? I don't even know. This is right. Is this good? Is this good?
That way.
I did it right the first time?
I think
amazing. So. Philip. What's up, Philip? How you doing, Philip?
What an intro, man. That was great. I'm doing pretty good. Had a busy day. Feels good to be doing this podcast at this time. So yeah.
Based. So you're Romanian, but you're Canadian. Is that how that works, right?
That's right. My parents both Romanian, met here. I was born here. That's my story.
I think I saw that episode of Degrassi. That's awesome. Simon, how are you? Good to have you back. What's up?
Oh, thank you. I'm doing all right.
The men of few words, these Canadians sometimes.
I'm very talkative, yes.
Doing all right. Yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, there's some BurnEye is facing your microphone side. Well, see, the thing is they've got this weird like mirroring thing that's going on. That's kind of like, it is what it is. Okay. I don't know. So
I was confused and thought I was messing up my microphone by that comment. How's my sound? Is it good?
I mean, it's not perfect, but it could be improved. I think you need to turn your gain down, turn your level up. You know, it could be one of those things, vice versa, one or the other. But it could be worse. I understood you. As long as you're close to the mic. And who am I to tell anyone about mic usage? I'm pretty terrible at it. I just kind of barely got my life together enough to use this microphone now. And people constantly are like upset because they're like, hey, don't you understand? This ad blocker plugin, they want to get rid of this ad block. Let's try this. Block script. Does it work? I didn't have to get rid of the ad blocker. I just had to block the script that wanted me to get rid of the ad blocker. Let me try to set this up a little bit funnier. So we've been doing this show about MKCANADA and, mind control and, cannibalism. Canada's sexy. We all know how sexy Canada seems, but you can't just move there. I think a lot of Americans watching this show think, wow, I want to live in a place magical with hockey, violent characters and royal family members and monarchy. And what's the other thing that just happened? The Order of Canada. I think that's what we're talking about tonight. But point is, thinking of fleeing to Canada, Canada doesn't want you, eh? That's in 2023.
If you don't like the US, you're probably not going to like Canada either. Just saying. We're pretty much the same.
We're pretty much American. We say A with a funny accent, and it's a shit lot colder up here. Pardon my language. There's a couple super chats here for you, good Andreas.
Oh, dude, Liz BC, thank you. It says, good job roasting Krigler. You should get Nina Infinity on MK Canada. Happy New Year to y'all up in the North Pole. I forgot my best one, like, at the end, because then Adam was like, no. And I was going to say, like, well, make sure you get vaccinated or you might end up like Adam Krigler. I thought that was going to be, but there's not a lot of negativity in my heart for Adams at all, really. I don't think I have any. Yeah, I love that guy. Travis, Philip, thoughts on Top G? And there's kind of this like yeet. You get an additional free yeet with that one. And wait, I missed, there was one more you pulled up. Where was that last one there?
I think there was only 2.
So I saw Bernie in the house. That's true. He is in the house. That is the case. I'm just showing you a blank picture because they like the block, the script there. But moving to Canada, 2023, it's going to be almost impossible. Enacting 2-year ban on purchasing of residential property by non-residents. So you won't be able to get a house and start the process to become a citizen. You have to become kind of a feudal Canadian, right? Where you rent. The prohibition on the purchase of residential properties by non-Canadians Act. So this is, how does it affect a dude in Chicago? Not so much. The lady who's got her life together in America is not probably going to Canada. But let's say you're a family of Syrians. I don't know, right? Somebody from some country that goes to Canada. That happens a lot, right?
There's actually a lot of Syrian immigrants in Canada since the war broke out. And there are some really good people from what I've met so far. They really love farming and like,
well, we're not going to let them own any property to farm. That'd be crazy.
Like, that's the thing. Like in the city, like these small little backyards, and they terrace the crap out of it. And like I've never seen so many vegetables before in my life. And like my dad's a Russian farmer. Like it's amazing.
That's pretty impressive. Wow. Okay, so that's the future. Basically, is tearing out these edible landscapes that the Syrian refugees have brought. Thank you very much, Real Hydro. And yeet, a Canadian colloquialism. I'm not sure. I think yeet is maybe, but I think it might be Japanese. I don't know. Could be Finnish or French. Who knows? It's an internet thing, right? And you're gonna have to look into that. Yeah, if they tear out all the edible landscaping and all the gardens, they don't let anyone own their property anymore. That's how they got rid of people in the Kulak period in the Soviet Union. So if they take people that would otherwise have pride in themselves and in the fruits of their labor, and they take away their pride by taking away the fruits of their labor, then you could effectively go back to having an inner city Syrian gang in Vancouver.
In a lot of places, they don't allow you to collect rainwater, and that's in the U.S. as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's that movie again. What's it called again? Oh, man, Sleep Dealer. That movie, so great. Mexican movie about a guy who comes from a village where they, it's illegal to collect your own rainwater, and they blow up his village because they're collecting water like they've done for thousands of generations. So he gets to Mexico City, and the only job is to put on this weird Neuralink helmet where you get to wash windows in Dubai over VR. They don't have to actually like bring you from Mexico anymore to do the window washing. You just do it on VR. But then you find out that they're just draining all the tryptophan out of your brain and taking your dreams. Bummer, right?
That's dark.
Yeah, our dreams?
Yeah, dude, Sleep Dealer.
Oh, cool.
Best Mexican movie I've seen in like 4 or 5 years. I don't know. There's some pretty good Mexican movies, to be fair, but I like that one. Order of the Order of Canada. You guys know what the Order of Canada is? Have you heard of this? Have you seen this or heard about this?
Yeah, I've seen it given to a lot of people. I don't think many people take it too seriously, but
well, that's the trick, isn't it?
Big deal about it.
Canada will always ride on this concept of not being taken seriously. That should be the slogan of Canada. We're not taken seriously. Canada does a lot of serious
stuff. Tugboat, eh? Don't make fun of our Navy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or used to. Canada,
New
land
Anomaly
of once
Productions,
upon a time.
another $5 super chat for you tonight. All these are yours tonight too.
New Anomaly. All the FVEYs countries. I'm sorry, I was going to read it for you. I'll try to read super chats in the earnest effect of Adam Krigler. All of the FVEY countries are racing to tyranny. The ones with guns will hold out the longest. Can someone explain me what FVEY?
Five Eyes, the Five Eyes company.
Oh, yes.
America, Canada, UK, New Zealand, and Australia. Is my sound better now, by the way?
Sounds glorious, actually. I think you're getting, maybe I've lowered my expectations. But no, tell me, guys, if you think his sounds as good as I think it does. The 5 eyes. Okay, so when you pretend that Canada is just like, it's kind of like putting the Stanford military secret experiments in California or something like that. You know, people were like, "Oh yeah, dude, California." In the way I talk, I can't even make fun of myself, but you know how I talk, and it's adorable. It's this weird surfer thing. How could you possibly take seriously the accent? That's what Canadians are doing. They're hiding behind this veil of adorability, and it's kind of like when Furbies were brought into the Pentagon and they were recording everything. Remember that? Furbies, Pentagon banning Furbies because they thought they were recording on the internet. They had the capacity to record.
Really? I don't remember that.
The Canadian is like the Furby unto the Pentagon, pretending to be this calming and fuzzy, adorable, friendly foe. But really,
so the plot of Canadian Bacon, then.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, what's the more important movie? Strange Brew. Why have we never really done this? Why have we never really gone into the MK Ultra movie about the beer that's like a psychedelic mind control substance? Strange Brew, right? This is the most important.
This sounds like tonight's topic.
Have you seen this movie? You know what I'm talking about?
I have not.
I've
I guess I'm going to have to come back in next week's talk.
But a long time ago, so I don't remember the details.
I'm going to need to take the time to probably rewatch it myself. Basically, though, I think I told you what you need to know about it just now. It's called Strange Brew. And these Canucks, Newfoundlanders or something to that effect, I could be wrong, and they're into hockey and this and that. They end up uncovering this deep-seated conspiracy to mind control all of Canada using this weird Strange Brew beer and the media, right? I think there's layers and layers to this movie, so it's important. But the Order of Canada, okay, just for a bit, let's just try to focus. The Order of Merit, the Centennial Canadian Federation, right? What is the Canadian Confederation? So we talk about Canada as a union, as an empire, as a state, as a commonwealth, as part of Britain. But what about this confederation? Have you heard of this? Do you know about this?
Yeah, basically we're a company.
Yeah.
Strictly speaking.
Yeah, and of made up autocratic states. Like the provinces are compartments of it's like Google's an alphabet, right?
Yeah, we're a vassal state. There's no doubt about it. Like if Canada was independent, we would be refining all our own oil instead of shipping it across the border, across the entire continent down to like Texas or the Gulf of Mexico. It's ridiculous.
I mean, something is definitely going on with the Confederacy. The idea of the Confederacy. There's actually a treaty of natives, and that their lands have been taken over. These are the Confederate tribelands, and this allows for Canada to exist as a maritime bureaucracy on top of these conquered lands, which have treaties that say, sure, yeah, you can have the governance over the properties, and then that government can be outsourced to England, but really they have everyone they need in Canada at this point, right? They have all these rich British and a couple French royals that kind of run Canada, and they have this thing which is called the Order of Canada. And so you see that, they just said, what's his name? Eugene Levy just got the Order of Canada. And it's kind of interesting because it's whatever, right? It's just this actor, right? Who cares about an actor? But he does all of these state-run TV shows. He is the voice and the face of so many scenarios for Canadian television. He's a secret agent, right? He's a public face and famous secret agent. I mean, it's kind of interesting to me. And also Victor Garber, right? Because we always think, these are these faces, and like think about how much of the world is affected by Canadian actors and how they are essentially royalty, but no one takes it seriously because they're saying, oh, well, it's the friggin' Canadian Order of Canada. So, what is that? But
they actually have to go through classes to learn how to speak like Americans when they go to Hollywood.
Oh yeah, how's that work? Canadian Mid-Atlantic training or no? I feel like that's what TV does though in Canada, like because the Canadian accent has been really affected by Degrassi and shows like that. For real, they don't say oat anymore, and that's also interesting. I found out that it's really only parts of southern central Canada, it sounds like, and maybe Newfoundland, but where the Scandinavians went through the central, that say like oot. Like oot's not like a really Canadian. Not how many Canadians
Not
do you
out
know that
east anyway.
What's it all about, eh?
it's not as
Nobody
many
says
people
that ever,
Yeah.
except maybe absolute Frenchies. Nobody says that. I don't get
Right.
where that-
I hear people say boat a lot. I'm like, what's that a boat? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but
I say that.
yeah, boat. Yeah, what's that all? Check it out, man. Check it out, bro. Like I've heard that more than I've heard oot, like for sure. I don't know.
Check it out.
Check it out. Yeah, well, you did it better because there's still a U in there now, and I think it's because Degrassi and all these TV shows, and they're affecting the accent, and all of a sudden, everyone across Canada is like, "Well, I want to speak like they do in the big city. I want to sound like I'm from Toronto," and then they start to. It's like
Hey, Bernie,
Yeah, eh?
how do you pronounce the last letter of the alphabet?
Z.
Z? Z?
Yeah,
So
Z.
Z is the American. Z is the Canadian.
Yeah,
Because
Z.
it came from Izzard.
Yeah,
That's
right.
why you have Ada Izzard.
There's a Canadian rave DJ group called Zed's Dead. It's not Z's Dead, it's Zed's Dead, right?
Absolutely. I like saying Zed, but then people get upset at me. They're like, "What are you trying to prove?" I'm not. What am I going to say? It just
It's
makes more sense.
cultural appropriation.
It also sticks out a lot because of the way we mess with the letters' names in general. I like in most countries, the sound of the letter is the name of the letter, and then in English, we're just like, E is I. Ha 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 ha. So we're messed up people. I don't know this Order of Canada thing though. It makes me feel like a lot of what it's the MKCANADA thing again. That so much of it is these are famous people that are set up to be famous people, but it's a small country. So who's this Crosby named to Order of Canada? Wasn't he like a?
Asking me about celebrities is a mistake.
I thought you guys knew about hockey. No,
Who pays attention to them, eh?
I
I
thought
guess
you guys
we
watched
watch
hockey.
it, but we
About
should
hockey.
know.
I'm more into curling than hockey, honestly.
dude. Let's talk about curling. Curling's.
Well, you have to watch the movie Men with Brooms.
I was about to talk about it. Men with Brooms. Ah, what a good movie. Men with Brooms is amazing. It talks about everything: fertility, masculinity, life, death, birth, beavers, and also Scottish heritage. What's his speech? He's like, in the 1600s, a man found a giant stone and rolled it across the ice. And Scotsmen have been arguing about how to properly roll stones across ice ever since. Something like that. An amazing, amazing movie. I don't know. Liam Neeson. Freaking great. What about curling, though? What do you love about curling?
It's the thinking man's sport.
Curling's fun, eh?
It's
Most
very,
boring sport out there unless you're playing.
very strategic.
Dude, yeah, I was playing N64 Olympics 1998, 97, or Winter Olympics, the cartridge, back when it came out. And I remember the adults coming, they're like, you can play any game. There's in physics, environments. It was an N64 still. But like, you can go skiing, surfing, snow, and you're playing curling. And we're like really into the curling one because it was just so strategic and it was so difficult to get right. It's the best game in the world, really. I don't know. But then I looked at, they have curling here. And it's like super cold. Fun fact, right?
Curling for me will forever be the Simpsons episode of, hey, all three of our fans are tuned in, eh?
I think people love curling though, right? Anybody who loves curling, let us know.
For all three of our fans must be thrilled.
Letterkenny's not real though, right? Like, is that real? I feel like Letterkenny is kind of is this state-sponsored terrorism? Like they're trying to tell you what Canada is, and is it real? I don't know.
I don't know. I never really got into Letterkenny. I do love Sunnyvale Trailer Park, though. That's a Canadian classic.
Sunnyvale Trailer Park, is that not Trailer Park Boys? It's something else?
Yes, it is. That is Trailer Park Boys, 100%. You got it.
Okay, just making sure. Sunny.
You got
Oh man.
it.
I
They
mean,
like
so
to
yeah.
party too, eh? Drink
What is
quite often when I used to drink.
Yeah, like, so what is Canada then? Like, so is this real? Do you think this is really Canada? Like, what do you think really is Canada?
Honestly, I would say a collection of hicks and people who are hicks and trying very, very hard not to be hicks.
It isn't Toronto. Yeah. Ooh, okay. Because I was about to argue about Toronto, and then
And it's
that's what they're doing.
Depending on where you live, like if you go to Montreal, you'll see both of them right next to each other. Like one building will be like people screaming, running around, and then right next door you'll have someone playing the piano. It's weird.
I don't know, man. I think that is the idea. So it's trying to be not. I mean, so you're trying to emulate something or trying to escape what you are if you're in a city in general. And so, trying to be like other cities. Do you think Canada tries to be like other cities, or how proud do you think Toronto?
We're very passionate about the hockey competition in the cities, I guess.
I thought you were. I was like asking you about this Crosby.
Burn down our own city if we win or lose, it seems. So
in the snow, which takes more diligence, really.
I think we have a higher tolerance for cold than Americans do, just in general.
Maybe. I think you guys have better jackets, is all it is. Because if you go outside in shorts, I think you guys can't handle it nearly as well as a Californian. Like, because we're just used to like dealing with the cold when it comes. Because we're like, oh, I didn't bring my jacket ever. Like prepares you.
Californians own jackets.
You see what I mean? But Northern California is weird, bro. It's a weird place. Order of Canada. So the Cree advocate among 4 Ottawans appointed to the Order of Canada. So a bunch of Order of Canada presentations this last week. I don't know. Cree advocate.
They just needed a lot of good news.
Oh, this guy seems like he deserved it. A Cree advocate.
Yeah, but like if they're making a big stink about it on the news, generally, like I don't know. Yeah. Normally it's just in passing.
Anything that's on the news, it's usually the exact opposite. We live in a backwards world.
Yeah, Canada delays the expanding medical assistance in dying to include mental illness, but it's still a policy built on quicksand. So there's a bunch of arguments. Obviously, people have been saying this.
What? They want to expand assistance.
Oh, they've been. I thought you.
The mental illness. So people that are not mentally well in the head are allowed to.
There's a quick way out. You don't need pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. So if you're suicidal, the solution is,
suicide. Wow, that's ridiculous.
It's dark.
The bill's been in for more than 5 years now, but they've been slowly hedging it to make it appreciable, and so that more people will go along with this idea, because there will be some people that are like, really, dude, just let me do it. And you're going to say, yeah, well, don't make it illegal. What are you going to do? But at the end of the day, who cares if it's illegal? Because if you do it, then what are you going to do? Arrest the person? It's just like, so I don't know. They're dead. It just seems like it's over. So I feel like you don't really need to legalize it, but at the same time, by legalizing it, you kind of industrialize it. You make it, you mechanize it, so it's automated and happens more often, more regularly.
And I saw someone scary.
Put it
that's
very
like the prison system in the U.S. How it's like turned into an industry essentially. Sorry, Simon. Continue.
I saw someone put it very succinctly, where instead of it being the right to die, it becomes the duty to die, and I think that's where we're headed, and it's not pretty.
Yeah, Logan's Run. Whoever said that just now. I mean,
carousel.
Yeah, I think that we're going to get to a point where, people find meaning in living their lives, right? And pull him up there. He made it. What's up, girl? Wait, I tried to pull him up. Oh, but so is Bernie. Bernie's trying to help. Bernie's only ever there to help. Bernie's the guy who organizes and schedules for me, which is both ironic and amazing. I think it's kind of like
super ironic. But
it's like the blind leading the blind until all of a sudden you realize that they see what other people don't. Kurt.
Hola, senor.
You've got a beard, bro. Let me see this. Let me get on. That's nice.
Hello.
That's nice. Wow. Can I get like a profile? Can you see a little bit of profile there?
Look at that. You're looking Canadian, Kurt.
Give me a tilt to the look at your sink. Ooh,
plaid is classic. It's timeless.
Dude, that's the word.
That's a good
for the plaid with the beard. It's as Canadian as it gets.
So we're talking about medically assisted dying because, you know, we like to keep it light. And one of the things that comes up is this idea that meaning comes from life. So you've got these movies like Thunderball, which is a classic. And I've, you know, went on a huge like, oh my God, wait, not that one. Is that the wrong one? What's the one, man? You know, with the
Thunderdome?
Thunderdome. Oh my God.
Lumbersexual. I love that description. How about you, Kurt? Are you lumbersexual?
I'm a Jack and I'm okay.
Maybe.
When you get sexual, you get a log. I don't know, but so this is right either the movie Thunderdome. No, come on, Rollerball. I'm just like messing this up. So Rollerball, obviously amazing movie, filmed in Munich to show what it would be like. It's a post World War II Munich. So they're saying, hey, this is what the rest of the world will look like when we have a bunch of corporate fascist state replacements. This, you know, so the Dallas will be owned by the energy corporation. There'll be 6 corporations that run the whole world because all the states will end up property of the corporations. And when this happens, everyone's happy for the most part because corporations give them everything they want, so long as they basically are owned by the corporation in some sort of a neo-feudal revival of, you know, Moorish slavery law from ancient Africa. But, you know, then what do you live for? Where's your meaning found? And so the meaning that they're finding is limited. But this guy, he's a rollerball guy. And so the team goes around and everybody dies in the Coliseum usually. But this guy, he's been rollerballing for like a couple years, which is impossible. And he finds all this meaning in achieving in the game, right? And that is like Carousel, we were saying, like in Logan's Run, because in Logan's Run, they die at 25, but is it 30? I think it's 25. It's the only
30,
way.
Yeah.
They get the flash in hand at 25, but they have to go to Carousel to try to live forever, but they never get to live forever. And it's not really about that. It's really just that going into Carousel gives you some last hurrah and some little bit of meaning in your life, right? Because you never had any meaning before, but now they're giving you something to die for, which is the things from 1936, where they've got the Wizards of Science, the Freemasons of the Air, or something like that. And they are.
The part that everybody forgets about Logan's Run is that it's not like parents that are creating the children. They're just clones. So you just get replaced with your next clone.
Oh, really? They're the same
DNA
as the last one.
There's a scene where they go to the place and you see Logan's next iteration just sitting there in a tank.
But it's not that they're mixing DNA like in Brave New World. It's just clones.
I'm not sure if they go into details. It's been a while. It's been several years since I watched it.
I was under the impression it was more like Brave New World. Brave New World, you know.
The Bakanovsky process.
Yeah, so you take the DNA and you combine it and you get the best DNA, and that way you're constantly trying to enhance the human race every generation, all while keeping it at the minimum evolutionary progression. So it's a slower progression, but the lowest denominator is the deciding factor until it gets to a baby that accidentally gets injected with alcohol, right? And causes
I think it was whiskey.
Right. And then that kind of screws up the transhumanist process a bit. And he's like a normal human that would have existed in the 19th century, you know, from a drunk mother like everybody else. Like that.
Sounds like Saskatchewan.
You guys have any thoughts on Brave New World or 1984?
Entirely too close to home.
1984 is scary because that's our new reality, it seems. Should have been called 2023.
Well, 1984, the funny part is that all those horrors are for the party. So like the main character, he's part of the whole machine. If you're outside of that, you actually get a better deal than that, it seems like, almost. Although you're still getting like MK Ultra with the 2 minutes of hate and all that, but
yeah. It seems like there's a price to pay for allowing the scenario to play out in real life. I think we've been allowing the scenarios to play out in full force over the past several years, and at some point that just becomes unsustainable. Like you can't build a society around that. You can't have such crazy authoritarianism without paying some sort of having some sort of repercussion for it. And I think we're starting to see a lot of the repercussions, and we're like, oh, why is this shit happening? And there were alarms going off the entire time of why it was going to happen. But you can't change things when people really are lulled to sleep by Pleasure Island, which we talked about 2 weeks ago. That's essentially what part of our culture is amounting to, is a little bit of Pleasure Island, and how that is setting us up for short-term and long-term failures. A lot of it, we had major failures and meltdowns 14 years ago with similar, loose financial policy, and definitely rampant greed and unrealistic expectations, not just from Wall Street and a lot of authority figures, but from the American consumer as well. So when those two things come together, and they just create this behemoth of just ugliness that you can't get away from. So a lot of people have been hurting over the past year, and without a doubt. And it's sad to see exactly how that's going to play out over the next year, because we don't know how bad it's going to get in full force.
That's the thing. So we've been given like two faces here. You've got 1984 versus Brave New World, and Brave New World is pretty much the opposite and the same, but it's this happier scenario because they're on. I mean, I think everyone's on drugs either way. But in the 1984 version, the drugs are keeping you from having emotions, keeping you from sexuality, etc. And in Brave New World, the drugs make you not care about sex anymore. I think it's kind of repulsive because you can get pleasure better ways. And so you're just constantly in a pleasure dome, and you go on these like nice walks in this, virtual reality thing. It's the Jetsons, right? Like the Jetsons live in that perfect world where they have to work all the time for whatever the hell Sprocket is. What does a Sprocket do?
Rocket, right?
It goes inside of a thing. It's like everything's run by sprockets, right? So, but he's got a wife who hates him and uses him for money. His son doesn't give a damn. He just wants to like bring forth Skynet. His daughter wants to be pretty and like everyone else, and she's just got this old face, kind of a thing. And she's constantly telling her secrets to Google AI, recording the family, right? The only happy one is the dog, really. And it's just the robot is clearly, she's a slave, the enslaved robot. They're like commenting on, this is a very near demise civilization. This is a time that won't last. It's very similar to the time that it's filmed in, which is a quick blip. The early 60s before psychedelics, late after the 50s, like doesn't exist anymore. But
His
they live in the
entire
sky.
job is to press one button and supervise an AI.
Yeah, and his finger hurts, right?
Like our world today, hey?
His job, though, gives him carpal tunnel. They invented They didn't have carpal tunnel before this joke. People used to laugh. They were like, huh, this guy, he's hurt in the finger, because that's all he does. It's the only thing that hurts, because usually it hurt your back working or something. But then they're like, actually, this is a real thing that happens. So an interesting prediction from the Jetsons, right?
I have to watch an episode now because I don't remember anything about that show. It's like
you brought back like childhood memories. Jetsons was like one of the only shows that was, I think, on.
Oh, I just watched the Flintstones over Christmas.
Whereas the Flintstones is a way better show. Way better show. It's timeless. It's classic. If you go back and watch the Jetsons, it hurts. You can only watch it in a critically analytical way to see what's wrong with it. You just feel bad for the family, bad for George Jetson, bad for everyone involved, really. I mean, I feel, and you just kind of want the whole thing to end. You're like, when will it stop? When will civilization destroy itself? Please, God, stop the Jetsons. But the Flintstones, it's like, there's something a bit more terrifying there as well. I mean, besides the fact that there's an alien that's watching the whole time from the future, that has control over their whole civilization, has decided to befriend him. By the way, this is clearly out of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, right? You get the reference here.
This is a deeply esoteric show. I have to say, like, I watched 2 episodes over Christmas, and it was kind of mind blowing, approaching it from a brand new perspective after all these years. Like,
did you buy the cigarettes though?
The Flintstones are actually corporate slaves. That's
Absolutely.
kind of
Owned by
yeah.
the Rockefellers.
Yeah, that's the weird part of it, because you would think they're supposed to be more in touch with nature, but no, the whole show is a very divine joke
Here he is
because
murdering a turtle, digging out the earth. Yeah. In front of a volcano. A volcano that's actually going right now.
The Flintstones, it's like my dad's name is Fred, and well, I'm close enough to Barney that we were one half.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole show is designed to show the entrapment of generally living within a society and within a construct, because like you if they were truly, you know, primordial, it'd be a lot more tribal, but they take the setting that should be tribal and they apply modern civilization dynamics to it. So there really is something really ingenious about the show that should probably be underscored. And I think you see a lot of Fred's suffering throughout his social expectations. And so like it was made.
Chip, your name is a cartoon. Sorry. I love you, Chip.
No, you're good. I'm like reanalyzing this as I say
Absolutely.
it.
I mean, there's so many weird things about the Flintstones because the entire show, for another really quickly, the robotic thing in the Jetsons, the big difference to me is that because they are animals, you're actually seeing it's the opposite. So one way you're like, oh, well, all the work will be done by machines and they're not going to care. And that leads you into demise. Whereas here, all the machines' work is being done by living Shintoist spirits that are beings. These are anthropomorphic animals. And so because of that, you're thinking, wow, this labor is really taxing. I mean, the garbage disposal has to digest all this food. This toucan has to make all these records. This, what's it called? Dionyscus is trying to lift boulders all day. It's like, you're like thinking about the suffering going on in the lives of all of these characters and instruments and animals and persons.
You like feel bad for like the birds and stuff. Like
right.
One of the birds
all of them. Yeah, that's a very good point. They're slaves. They're constantly being used and abused and everything.
Yeah, and we don't
for the show.
This is after this guy is off his shift. He's gonna get turned into a rack of ribs to be eaten at the drive-in movie by Fred Flintstones, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think there's a deep reference there. One of the reasons why they incorporate jokes, the form of joke of using animals as how we use modern tools, is because in our modern society, what we're actually doing is that we're actually extremely separated from the human life that's doing a lot of these robotic things and actually exerting the suffering. Whereas in the joke, in the show, the joke is that the suffering is actually right in front of our faces, and they just disregard it. It's like, oh, this animal's just doing this really, semi-depraved thing for me, only in service of me, and I couldn't give any care about it otherwise. That is our modern society. We're just separated from the life force that's behind it. That's Nike,
Some really interesting things about Fred Flintstone, right? Because Fred Flintstone was Alan Reed's voice, and he created the character in a lot of ways. He was supposed to say Yahoo, and instead he's like, can I say Yabba Dabba Doo? Kind of like in the Fiddler on the Roof. Yabba Dabba 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 Yabba Dabba Dabba Doo. That literally is the inspiration for the character. And if you think about Fiddler on the Roof,
he looks like Soprano.
Fiddler on the Roof constantly, it's about a guy who's constantly talking to God, but he's like, God, why would you do this to me? Couldn't you be a bit nicer to me? I mean, I pray to you every day. Maybe you could leave me some food after I'm done. This kind of always kind of like, I love you, but you could do more, and that is Fred Flintstone to a T. He comes through this guy who wants the world. He expects of the world. He expects the world or of God, and so Fred Flintstone is constantly taking from his friend who is trying to be selfless to him and show love the entire time and be his best neighbor, because he feels like he hasn't gotten enough. And Barney puts up with it because he has enough. He has an abundance of love. And so it's this constant dynamic throughout the show that's teaching you about how to behave based on, the more you're selfish, the more you're going to lose freedom of mobility, and the more selfless you are, the more utilitarian. The better for everyone is the better for you. It's an interesting way of teaching this lesson, because it's not saying, hey, God told you what's right and wrong and you should do it. It's like, realistically, if you get out a piece of paper and you do the math, doing what's best for other people gonna be what's most convenient. If you're selfish, you're gonna want to do what's best for other people, which is that's not just to Fred Flintstone, that's to the American idiom, right? And that's what they're saying. I think it's important.
I think we have a certain level of conditioned selfishness where more for me is the inherent good. I think that's the prevailing sort of.
Somebody give 10 points to Sprite Castle. Wait till your father gets home. I'm trying so hard. Where'd it go?
I feel like we get subtle messages about Fred's behavior. Like, Fred's standard behavior is actively encouraged in a lot of spheres in the American public right now. So I feel like that's actually kind of a wholesome message for the time. And I think it's so easy for it to go over people's heads, especially in the 50s and in the 60s. It's easy for wholesome messages to go over people's heads and then for not to get it. It's only in hindsight where you realize, like, oh shit, that's what they're going for.
Have you guys seen Wait Till Your Father Gets Home?
No. I have one more thing to say.
Yeah, sorry.
I apologize. I had this while I was watching the Flintstones, I had this thought, and so you notice there's a difference in the eyes of each character, right? Some characters have fully white and fully developed eyes, and some of them just have beads for their eyes. Why did they animate it that way? Like,
because there's different kinds of people in the world. It's straight up, and in the old days, Mickey Mouse had pupil eyes, or he had the dilated pupil eyes, and went to having moving around pupils in Fantasia. And then that was when in Fantasia he's given Mickey Mouse Steamboat versus Fantasia. He's given more audacity, more self-sovereignty, right? Whereas the original Mickey Mouse, right?
I think that's a way to put it. It's like, it's not showing which characters are necessarily important, because even the ones with beady eyes have personalities and whatnot. But take Fred. We're supposed to look at Fred as we're supposed to look at Fred through the eyes of Fred. Or not Fred. We're supposed to look at Barney through the eyes of Fred. And Fred sees Barney as a means to an end. So he doesn't see him as necessarily fully human, and that's why he has the beady eyes instead of the full white eyes. And I think that's applied to, and that's applied to his wife too.
Wow,
his wife has and
he never respects her throughout the show.
Exactly. So I think that I don't know. That was a really my mind went down there, and I was like, this makes sense if I put it this way. I think there was something like deeply subconscious going on there, but it was kind of intentional by the animators. But I don't know who the animators are. But it's really interesting to think about that.
But yeah.
But you see, so Barney's wife has has the regular eyes. So does she represent sort of an object of lust from Fred, because Barney is only a means to an end? I don't know. I don't think the show ever went that far, but it's
does he respect her? Does he respect her because she's so different? It's not his wife, so he's like, well, I have to be more serious. Or is it because she's Jewish as well? And he thinks that these others are goyim. Although she's a redhead, she could easily be. I have no idea.
Wasn't this before the time of the Talmud?
The Flintstones is the 60s. No,
I'm joking.
I'm just kidding. Actually, probably right on time for the Stone Age. But really quickly, I want to jump into the Wait Till Your Father Gets Home, because this show is amazing. If you haven't seen it, take the time. It's about like a family in the 70s. It's got the Happy Days father, the fat daughter who wants to be hip, and she joins all these hippie movements, and they have to deal with her like horrible boyfriends, and the son's sleeping all day, but he could make money. And then their youngest boy is this young Republican kind of Family Ties reference, or maybe it was before Family Ties, I think. So definitely I would say the best Family Guy this was what inspired Family Guy and a lot of those American Dad and those kinds of shows is Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. But I wanted to say with the Flintstones, and I've said this before, but I don't know if you know this, Kurt, that do you know that they take place in terms of, you're talking about before or after the Talmud, that the Flintstones take place at the exact same time as the Jetsons, that they're in the same timeline and they're existing simultaneously right on top of each other, literally like above each other.
Huh? Were they similar? Well, I guess they have similar animation styles, so it was the same animator.
So yeah, it's a Hanna-Barbera, and you can watch the movie about it. The Jetsons meet the
same
Flintstones.
universe, same timeline, essentially.
Right. And so what it is it's not in the forward or backward, it's up and down vertically, that they're above the clouds where they're safe in this hyper advanced civilization that the Jetsons live in, while the Flintstones are living in this is Brave New World, right? They're living out in the wastelands and the zones, which are quarries that are still being used to mine. What are the rocks really used for, right? And so you've got a secondary civilization that's extracting the materials, that's living above, and then you have this feudal civilization that's feudal in the sense that the middle class is feudal to the Rockefellers. And that is the irony of the Flintstones saying, hey, they're slaves, but they're corporate slaves, and they're living pretty well. And in a lot of ways, when George Jetson visits the Flintstones, he finds that they're living better than the elite or the slaves of the elite that are living above.
Kind of similar to today's technological urban class of population compared to the hunter-gatherer tribes that still exist within like the Amazon and throughout the world. Everywhere.
There's even a weird fourth world, third world kind of innuendo thing at the end there, because what they end up doing is selling in the above world these retro style stone looking cars, and then they've got, for some uses, some of the the advanced technology ends up making its way down and being used more by some of the elite. So there's definitely a lot of connections there between like the Rockefeller. Flintstones Rockefeller. Let me see if I can get the Rockefeller characters, in the Flintstones, and how that they're this ancient family that have somehow continued to run the world since the time of the Flintstones. And there's the Sprockets, right? Sprockets.
I just remember that John Goodman played Fred. That was it's been a long time since I've seen that.
What's the name of the other guy? This is the guy who's, and he's clearly got the same eyes too, the pupil eyes, right?
Yeah.
Cogswell Cogs versus Spacely Sprockets. That's what it is. I mean, there's a lot there though, and I think that the Flintstones are definitely like the better option of the two. But if you look at the Brave New World connection, right? In the Brave New World, notes it out. You've got John, son of director, and Linda, Bernard Marx, right? The alpha male is this kind of physical physique, who's like super strong. Holtzwell Watson, alpha lecturer at the College of Emotional Engineering. Lenina Crown, vaccination worker at the Central London Hatchery. Mustafa Mund, Fanny Crown. All these names are interesting because they're combinations of two kind of opposing views, right? I forget if Bernard is what's the in-depth
evil Bernards.
Yeah, right. But yeah, these characters, the idea that there's this accident, there's like, you've got Cogswell Cogs, Spacely Sprockets, then you've got this John Jetson, kind of George Jetson character, and he goes down to the wastelands. And when he's in the wastelands, he gets lost and he has to make his way back. And they find out it's not the way that they were told, right? And this happens over and over again in the Jetsons, is that they kind of live in this isolated bubble, and they think everything is just the way they're told, and they're living off pills. They're not real food, right? And everything is just this kind of, they think it's perfect because they have no idea that there's anything else outside of it. And then when they finally meet people in the real world, they're like, wow, actually, nature is pretty interesting. What if we allowed some of that to exist and we stopped limiting how much of that is possible?
I don't think I've seen that one. Looks pretty creepy.
Yeah, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. You can read the book, but there's definitely movie versions of it. I haven't seen this movie either. There's a Brave New World 1970s or 80s version. It's like a TV series. It's pretty crazy. I recommend that one if you're going to watch a movie from Brave New World. There's also one with Alec Guinness or something, or There's one with the Baldwin who's in there as well. What's up, Frankie? How's it going?
Hey, how's it going? How's everybody going? How's it going, eh?
Great.
How's it
Good,
going?
good. Glad to have you, my fellow Targaryen Calgarian.
Yes,
Dude.
yes. Good to be here finally. I missed your last one, Bernie. Thanks for sending the link, but glad to be here. Very, very interesting conversation.
Where are you from? What part of Canada are you at?
I live maybe 10 minutes away from Bernie. I live in Calgary
Oh, yeah?
as well. Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah, we're just thinking about the world in general and like this, there's also this idea. The thing that's interesting to me about colonization, when you talk about like the Flintstones as a reset colony and that there's a civilization living above it and that there's a little green man and everything. I mean, you've got these ideas of colonies of the foundling trains, right? And you got all of these kids that are brought from around the world. This keeps coming up. We talk about like 100,000 kids from Canada brought to Russia, 100,000 kids from Russia brought to Canada, kids from Australia brought to Argentina, kids from Argentina brought to France, right? In order to mix up the population.
I never knew that Canada sent orphans back to Russia and they actually swapped. That's
So
another layer of it.
The Catholic Church was like, this is probably good. And this is like early eugenics, right? Because they're saying, oh, well, it's probably good for genes and everything if we mix up the populations, stop inbreeding, all this other stuff. Like there's all these priests that were, studying genetics at the time. And they're like, well, we should probably
that's
do
how the Oddfellows became involved, because the Oddfellows was started by the priesthood as well. And the Oddfellows specialized in the sort of the organization of moving around the orphans with the orphan trains and other things.
Yeah, talk about the Oddfellows because they're really interesting. I mean, look at this weird logo they have, and they have these creepy buildings in San Francisco. But I mean, they're supposed to be nice guys that are helping kids, right? Or what?
Well, the thing about the Oddfellows is much like the Shriners. They're a branch of or an offshoot of the Freemasons. So while every Shriner and every Oddfellow is a Freemason, not every Freemason is an Oddfellow or a Shriner.
And it includes Catholic emancipation. So Catholics are allowed to be members, which is interesting. One of those Order of the Pug things. The Prince of Wales is an Oddfellow. So what do you think it is with I know that there's a big thing with orphans. My dad even told me, I was like, what are the Oddfellows? And he associated with that like years ago. What is the deal? They, teaching orphans how to get jobs once they move to these new cities or what?
Well, they were supposed to be the caregivers or the stewards, the custodians of the orphans until they could be placed into new foster homes. But they would also facilitate the finding of these homes. They acted as the middlemen between, let's say, middle America, rural American, I don't know, let's say some farmer from Kansas who arranges to have a couple of boys from New York City or Toronto, Canada, or wherever, sent to his farm to help him on the farm, and in exchange they get raised in a good wholesome family upbringing instead of on the mean streets of whatever, insert large city name here kind of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, and much was done here like that in Canada as well, where children from Montreal or Toronto, the two largest cities in the country, were sent out to areas in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. And also in conjunction with that, major immigration by specific groups was encouraged depending on the province in Canada. So, for example, in Alberta, Ukrainian and German immigration was strongly encouraged because they had a rural farming background, and therefore they could easily sort of transpose that type of lifestyle into Saskatchewan or Alberta much more easily than they could in Ontario or Quebec.
So bringing kulaks, when the kulaks are kicked off their property, their land's taken from them, bringing them to Canada. Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, the amount of people that are just forcibly assimilated, I think that that's something that isn't really brought up, but also how sometimes they're isolated in order to stop them from assimilating, right? Not brought to the city, but brought to a place where they continue being farmers, unlike the Syrians recently trying to stop.
Well, a lot of the rural towns, the rural farming towns here in Alberta, depending on what group emigrated to that area in the 18 and 1900s, if it was a German population that ended up sort of being isolated in this little agricultural hamlet. The town has a German-sounding name like Nordegg, Alberta. Then there's towns in Alberta that have French names because it was French Canadians from out east that were encouraged to migrate west. It sort of carbon copies the whole Manifest Destiny in the United States. It's very, very similar. Certain groups from certain countries were encouraged to emigrate, or to either emigrate to Canada or to move westward from Eastern Canada. And other groups were discouraged from coming into Canada, much like in the US.
Doing that to a certain extent.
Oh, sure, absolutely. The groups have changed. That's the only difference. You know, the areas of the world that are being encouraged to immigrate now are just different parts of the world. It's just a different stage in the agenda of the powers who should not be when it comes to muddling and mixing up everything and occulting our true history even more. Like, if you don't know what your heritage, your background is, if you don't know who your great-grandparents are, you have no roots. If you have no roots, you have no sense of direction because you have no point of origin. So how can you have any kind of jumping off point to build a future for yourself, your loved ones, your family, your friends, if you don't even know where you began, where you started from? I'm lucky. I knew my great-grandparents. So I'm kind of an exception to the rule these days, but I'm a bit older. I'm 52. So, you know, if I was 20, I wouldn't know my great-grandparents because they would have kicked the bucket already, you know?
It's amazing how resilient the Amish are. Like, you look at the Pennsylvania and Dutch and the Amish population, and, you know, I don't know, in Canada, I'm sure you also have Amish, I would imagine, right? Yeah.
We have some Amish in Ontario. Yeah. And then in the prairies, we have Mennonites and Hutterites. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically the same thing.
It's amazing how lasting, how it works. You know, you'd think eventually that you know, civilization would win that fight, and for the most part, they're still just like, no, that's pretty cool.
Oh, it's stronger than ever, and it has to do exactly like Frankie's talking about, how they have that family orientation.
It says intercourse. Sorry.
Like, it's like the East, like Eastern civilization, where family comes first, as opposed to the West, where they want to disassociate you from your relatives, from your heritage, and from who you are, so they can integrate you into being a cog of the machine as much as possible. And that's exactly it.
Well, and from what I understand it, there are slight differences between Amish and Hutterites and Mennonites. They're all based in sort of Christianity as sort of Christian groups that fled because of their persecution for their religious practices. In the U.S., the Amish still shun.
Can you imagine someone's like, take this light bulb and put it in your house, and like, no, like,
no, I'm getting the hell out of here. In the Amish still shun modern technology, but here in Canada, the Hutterites, who live in farming communities or communes, much like the Amish, they have the latest and the greatest and the biggest and the best of the tractors, combines, four-wheel drive pickup trucks.
Yeah, they got their extended Mennonite family. And also, like, people get Amish wrong. I found out. I have some friends who are Amish, and I also have a friend who grew up with the Amish. And Kurt, you're from Amish territory, right?
Ish. I've delivered pizza to Amish people before.
Holy guacamole. Guys, I'm going to just solo you. Hold on. Just say that again.
Oh, I've delivered pizza to Amish people before.
Can you walk me through how that's freaking possible? Like, what did they get on their cell phone? What do? Do they go to a payphone?
I think some of them do have cell phones, not like just like older fashioned flip phones when they have to do business calls and stuff. The part of their, I guess, doctrine, you might say, is it doesn't necessarily ban electricity. So a lot of them will still have like lights in their barn or stuff. But
right, I was looking at this picture earlier, and I've seen a couple examples of subwoofers in Amish caravans. Whatever you call that.
Hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, imagine. I mean, so like, in other words, if you're an Amish teenage girl and you're with your parents, and they're like, you know, hey, I'm gonna go out with this boy, and you're like, hey, but no, he's got like, don't worry, he's Amish. Like, that doesn't mean anything anymore. Basically, they're still gonna have music. So, I mean, and they love subwoofers. Think about that. That means that they're only enjoying the finer pleasures And that subwoofer, that's after 100 years of evolution of subwoofers and technology to test subwoofers and make sure they're safe and that they don't mind control you, or that they do the right way.
Well, see, the thing is that it was probably done with the Amish incrementally, much like the Hutterites and Mennonites here. When the Mennonites and Hutterites first started out here, they also shunned technology. They only used horse or mule, pull plows and all that sort of thing, even through the Industrial Revolution and into modern times. However, it did reach a point where their farms and the land that they were cultivating on, because generally they're grain farmers, cattle farmers, and chicken is the sort of the big three.
And I guess they make buggies. It's like there's a whole other car company we didn't know about.
But they couldn't keep up, so they had to basically. It started off as, okay, well, for farm use only, we'll buy these tractors, and then it slowly became to the point now where Hutterites. Same thing. They carry cell phones, and it's their private dwellings. They have television, satellite TV, streaming service, the whole 9 yards. Whereas 100 years ago, they paralleled the Amish with being a little bit more of a strict adherence to avoiding a lot of that technology when possible. And I think, now the Amish are starting to kind of come the way of the Hutterites and Mennonites, where technology is started to creep in. Except for some of the really old school ones, or maybe some that are a little bit more orthodox or more zealous, maybe. There's always going to be pushback, right? And there's always going to be some resistance. But a guy can't go from a horse and buggy to a Land Rover overnight.
Maybe. I mean, that's the thing. Maybe they're waiting for technology to work out. So like, okay, well, now we get electric cars, but didn't they have them at one point? So they could have gotten them when they were electric. So maybe they're waiting for the right technology. They're like, this isn't worth it, and we're just willing to do so much, and they're just not. They're like, I'd rather just literally go out and feed a horse hay and have it drag me around in a box that I make myself than get into that damn thing. I think that's a good mentality. I think we need more of that.
The
There's
Amish
definitely
secretly run all internet servers under the barns. I like that conspiracy.
That'd be a good way to make money, actually. I think that probably there are some Amish that are like, I don't use it, but I sell it. I mean, I'm sure they're like crack dealing Amish out there.
Oh, yeah, they don't get high off their own supply that way, huh?
Yeah. Well, you have to be careful not to use Wi-Fi, but, if it's all...
Speaking of Amish, have you guys seen that one documentary of like the crystal meth dealing Amish like town or gang or group? That one's pretty violent and ridiculous.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they were involved during Prohibition, moving alcohol around.
All it says is anonymous. It won't come up with Amish. Okay, there we go. The Amish and meth. 60s gained momentum in the 80s, now being called a full-blown drug epidemic, America's most dangerous drug. Well, the thing is, I've met some Amish that this happened to, that they were like told everything is horrible. Don't go out there into the English world. Happy Rumspringa. Then they go out into the English world because that's what Rumspringa is. And then they get all the way to California, of all places, or Portland, which I thought was worse. And in every scenario I've ever run into an Amish person that's like on Rumspringa, they don't understand. They're like, okay, cool, give me weed, give me alcohol, give me meth, because it's like all bad. It's all so they're just
all interchangeable, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you gotta like calm down, Amish people. When they're trying things, there's like, I'll try it all. Like, no. Like there are things we don't even try. Like, really? Like, yeah. There's things we try to avoid.
Yeah, I'm not taking any crocodile, thanks.
Right? Yeah. Try anything once as an Amishman. I don't know. It's scary. Let's bring it. 11-11. I do love 11-11. And let's bring it. That's pretty good. That's not Amish. That's Leggish. That was like a Bostonian accent. I'm supposed to read that in. Canada delays expanding medical assistance in dying to include mental illness, but it's still a policy based on quicksand. What do you guys think still about this idea that medically assisted suicide is going to be the solution to replace pharmaceuticals? Right now they're saying you can feel better if we give you a drug month to month, and then they're going to say you can't afford that, and they're just saying, so in other words, if you can't feel better, you should die. Do you think maybe there's some sort of silver lining here? Like it's going to get people to be like, no, I'm fine.
I think what it's going to end up causing is that we're going to end up with a two-tier system like in Quebec. So you either go to the public and get no treatment, or you are rich enough to support both the public and private system and then actually get treatment. Or you go to the US. but that's also difficult now.
Any thoughts?
I think no matter what side of the border, when you're talking the Canadian American, for a long time now, there's been a slow and I think deliberate chipping away at the mental health system. I mean, up here in Canada, they literally just close mental facilities and basically just release these poor stricken individuals back out into the streets. But there's no other system to pick up the slack. So that's why people that suffer from different forms of mental, to some extent, substance abuse problems that they need support in overcoming, end up among the homeless population. And then once they're homeless, well, then of course, a guy can just ignore them, eh? Get a job, you bum, you know, and that's how most people look at it. But they don't realize that at one point, part of the crappy socialist hellhole that we live in here in Canada, part of it was put to good use in the sense that our tax dollars did pay for some of these medical facilities for these poor individuals. Whereas now, where's that money being funneled to? So to the point where we're paying more and more taxes, but there's no place for these people to go, and these facilities are being shut down. And now we've got homeless in the streets, and a homeless person in the streets of Canada is much different than in California. You know, Toronto around the Great Lakes region gets cold. Here in Alberta and most of the prairie provinces gets freaking cold. And you've really only got 4 to 6 months of fair weather. The rest of the time is going to be hovering around 0 Celsius and below.
I would definitely call it unfair weather for sure.
Yeah. So it's not exactly a walk in the park for people that.
Yeah. See, meanwhile in California, they're like, it'd be way cheaper just to give them all mushrooms, right? And so I don't know. This isn't necessarily bad or good, but like California lawmaker introduces bill to legalize magic mushrooms and other psychedelics, so that people will just like, if you want to feel better. I mean, it might also lead to schizophrenia and everything else because California. But
well, British Columbia is legalizing mushrooms.
What do you guys think about it?
They grow there naturally, from what I understand.
They do, and the islands, especially off the west coast there. I think it's good. There's a lot of studies that like psilocybin and mild psychedelics are very healthy for mental health, but by legalizing it, then it can be educated properly and people can understand what they're doing and take the right amounts and in the right conditions so they don't do bad trips or overdose on it and then like have a mental breakdown. Instead, experience a little bit of the upside down or spiritual realm of it all.
And this is only just criminalize it, so it's not like you'll be able to sell these in the gas stations yet or something like that.
Yeah. Well, the problem that I have with any kind of governmental regulation and on any kind of substance like this is that they ultimately are in control of it. So I don't know if I necessarily want the government too deeply involved in anything that has to do with my own inner self, what goes on between my ears.
You bring up an excellent point, though.
But then to Bernie's point, though, some government regulation will make it safer for a guy because there'll be some education behind it, right? So, I mean, I'm kind of on the fence with the whole thing.
The people who decriminalized / legalized cannabis here, well, one of them was he made his career on putting people behind bars for that, but two, they owned a bunch of stocks and made a fortune on it, and they made sure that only they and their friends could actually get in on the market at first. So yeah. So now that the market is crashing because everybody else got in on it,
Yeah, I could speak to that. The mayor of our city owned a big chunk of land that this meat cold storage plant was on, and word came down from on high that marijuana was going to get legalized. The cold storage facility shut down, and they turned it into the largest grow operation there is in Manitoba. And he gets a nice big piece of it.
Imagine what they were probably doing before then was the same thing anyway, but just now it's legal. So before then it was like licensed to only people that could pay off the state to get away with things. The Marijuana Tax Act was originally like that. So when they made marijuana illegal, it wasn't really illegal. It was just an 100% tax. So they could just take it from you if you grew it. but they still needed certain farmers to grow it because they needed ropes for the boats and for the helicopters and everything like that, right? So they're like, you know.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Andreas. See, with marijuana, there's two different types. There's hemp, which grows really long with lots of stalk and very little bud. That's what you make rope out of, and there's no THC in it. Well, very little. Yeah.
And then there's a lot more in the female,
Yeah, and then there's the female marijuana plant that's all bud and all THC, and I'm not sure if you could make rope out of it.
Oh, yes,
Probably
you can.
Interesting.
Make plastics and things like that. You can make a lot of interesting
plastics for sure. Yeah.
I have confirmed that you can, in fact, make yarn out of it.
Yeah, but it's clearly it's different. That's an interesting point that for a long time people didn't associate marijuana with a drug because it was like everyone grew hemp. It was important. If you're a beekeeper, you smoked your bees with hemp. Maybe those guys knew, but most other people didn't understand. And you had all these different farmers that were growing hemp for their barns and for their oils and for all kinds of things.
There's literally hundreds of uses for hemp. Literally.
The Roman roads wheels were lubricated with hemp oil, and there's menstrual cramp tinctures were made for the Queen. The Queen Elizabeth was using them
as well. Hemp concrete apparently is way stronger than regular. It's crazy.
Canvas is Dutch for cannabis. So the sales to America, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, all written on hemp paper, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, people didn't really think, they're like, wait, this is what you're using you can get, because a lot of people smoke hemp, even like the flower of hemp in North Korea, but it's like rubensis, and so the cannabis rubensis is different than sativa or indica, or so I've heard. And they make cigarettes out of it, and that's because they can't get tobacco. And so you'll see a lot of North Koreans smoking high, like very low THC, but actually it turns out rather high CBD and several other kinds of things. So North Korean hemp cigarettes, bucket list thing for Andreas. If you're ever going to pack, please send them to me. That would be awesome.
There you go. Hemp has a lot of different aspects to it.
Wasn't a car maker experimenting with hemp fenders or something like that back in the 20s?
Everything used to be so first off, in the 70s, the Soviet Union used hemp diesel. Soviet hemp diesel. Let me see if I can find a picture of that for you. The Soviet Union was an agricultural crop. They were using hemp for in the 1970s. They had a lot of vehicles that were running just on pure hemp oil. The original diesel engine ran off peanut oil, but then was very quickly replaced with hemp oil once he was sure that it was clean enough for it, which required a filter. Before the cotton gin, the Eli Whitney hemp gin made slavery obsolete, because up to this point it was important for humans to do the hard labor of pulling down these rather rapidly growing 20-foot tall plants. 10 to 20 foot you could grow in certain circumstances. 10 foot reasonably in about 6 weeks, right?
Well, and what the gin did specifically was remove the seed from the plant as well. So that no longer had to be done by hand, and that was very labor intensive, took a long time. But with the gin, whether it's cotton, hemp, or other agricultural products, the machine did that for you.
Yeah, Popular Mechanics, maybe it'll say it. But this was the big issue, is that up to this point, slavery was essential, and then industrialization meant it was much more important to have educated workers than it was to have uneducated laborers, right? And so that's where the 19th century automation, everything comes down to hemp. And so it's an interesting enigma, hemp, because it was so fundamentally important to the success of the civilization of humanity up to this point. Like every single aspect of our lives relied on hemp. People ate hemp, used it as medicine, traveled through it, wrote their documents on ink made of it, on paper by it, etc. Their clothes, hemp. This guy's probably wearing a hemp shirt. And then all of a sudden we get rid of hemp for like the Mellon brothers and Anslinger and these guys who want to invent nylon, right? And nylon is interesting. Chemical.
Didn't Woody Harrelson drive across the United States in a bus that was ran by hemp oil?
I believe it.
Diesel?
That guy's dad killed Kennedy. He can do whatever he wants. I'm pretty sure. That's kind of it.
I know from my own silk screening clothing business, hemp shirts are exponentially better lasting and more comfortable than cotton if you get it made like manufactured properly, like woven hemp. Where it
Cotton
sucks.
is
Oh, man.
very polluting as well. People disregard it because it's not happening here, but they use a lot of fertilizer for
Here's
it.
the Soviet hemp medal to awarded to growers of hemp, right? So there, it was a thing that was pretty common in certain parts of the world up to the point where the United States started fighting to control it. But because of nylon and then these other, basically by getting rid of it's like we removed our strongest hand, by getting rid of hemp. And so it made humanity stronger. Hear me out. Because without hemp for the last 100 years, it forced people to invent anything besides hemp to do the job. And that's why we have things like Teflon, nylon, Kevlar, liquid crystal polymers. Celluloses were invented because they were discovered in hemp, right? Rayon was the early cellulose plastic that is not a polymer. It's a cellulose. It's biodegradable. It's made in the 1800s. So it was created because of hemp oil. So I mean, if it weren't for hemp, we wouldn't be here. But also, if it weren't for the fact that we got rid of hemp for a while, we wouldn't have secretive nimmed into the super mice we are now.
Nice reference. I like that.
They created Kevlar and they used that for bulletproofing. But a couple of years ago, there was a gentleman on YouTube that used hemp weave along with some carbon fiber, and he made a bulletproofing that stopped a 30-06 rifle, and it was pretty interesting. He was going to apply it to see if it could be tested to sell to the police in his area because it works so well. So I don't know what's better. Maybe it was just the mixture he came up with, but it's pretty interesting.
I'm going to get some goat silk. That's going to be my thing. You guys know about goat silk, right?
Yeah, where they genetically engineer some goats to produce the drag-align silk of certain spiders.
It's pretty sweet. I just want a bunch of that. I'll just make a big old vest or jacket out of it and just wear that all the time.
I'm not going to lie. A guy finds that pretty creepy.
Well, you get very small amounts in the milk, so you really have to refine a lot of it. So getting any significant amount is going to be very expensive.
I just
remembered
I'm supposed to look into hemp batteries of all things. Apparently, they're a good renewable resource.
Yeah, what was that just now? I saw the hemp battery out of which evil Irvine? Burbank? Which satanic Californian city was it? That's Eli? What's up? What's up, Wind Spirit? That's good to have you here. Guys, really quick shout out to Mystic Circuits. The greatest. If you guys are into Eurorack modules and you guys are interested in making music ever, American Time Machine, who's on the show right now, actually, American Time Machine. This is a reverse shout out to American Time Machine. Eli Windspirit, you should probably check out his music. He does the Golden Ratio. I Met a Nice Girl. We're gonna talk about this again later, but he does some amazing music. I've been using the Cardinal VST, which is the open source Eurorack thing. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, Mystic Circus, is seeing if we get the iDUM somehow into a Eurorack, thing. I was looking at your Ableton data because you did the right thing and put it out there. But if everybody were to make music using this, it would sound better. Is the thing. The algorithmic, powerful, outrageous. This product is out of stock. You can't buy it. He has to make them by hand. That was funny. But yeah, dude, we love you, Wind Spirit. And we love your stuff. We love Anna, Tree, Portal, Leaves Expander. About 36 people here who watch the show probably use Euroracks. So this is the Dennis Leary quote, like the few of you who understand what I'm talking about. But for instance, let's say you make music at all, like you have a guitar or something like that. You could get the attenuator or a low pass filter, and you could put that on your instrument. Pretty sweet stuff. All right. Well, I feel pretty good that I did that.
Andreas, you might be interested to know that there's a guy in Montreal who's currently working on yeast that's genetically modified to produce dragline silk.
Oh yeah,
so you get spider beer. He's on YouTube. It's the Thought Emporium.
Well, I just found an article, so I'll go with that. Yeast-grown synthetic spider silk could be the next luxury fabric. Oh, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I'm Cruella de Vil for yeast-grown synthetic spider silk. That is what I want.
He wants to use it to make bricks.
Okay, that's fair. A really light brick, maybe? Is that the idea? Like a building that's like balsa
like
wood?
spider silk brick. Yeah.
I'm into it. I like the idea. I don't really want bricks. What I want are freaking spiders, right? Like 3D printer spider. You know what? I'll do this. It's way
3D
easier. I found these days.
Silk, or do you want a bunch of 3D printed spiders running around everywhere?
Spiders,
I'm
3D
pretty sure there's a
printing,
horror
and
movies in the
geodesic.
90s about that.
1930s sci-fi paint illustration of spiders. Okay, I'll try that. 1930s sci-fi illustration of spiders, 3D printing a geodesic dome. Let's see if this works. That's kind of what I'm thinking, right? So what I want are spider, and so what they're going to do is robot spiders, and they're going to build buildings that way. Ooh, that's really
Nightmares
good.
for days. Nightmares for days. AI.
Yeah, illustration of spiders, 3 geodesic temple city. How about that? Because the thing is, instead of bricks, what you want is you want to like grow the building so that the building is all one piece, right? Geodesic
Did
house.
sorry to interrupt. Did you know about that? The old secret of the Druids when it comes to tree welding.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Let's bring that up. So the Picts, they stole that from the Picts. Picts tree weaving. Let's start with
Tree
that.
weaving, yeah.
So they
Coupled with tree welding, I guess it's two separate things that come together in order to make structures with trees.
they have living buildings, right? So oh, am I looking at something different? What's this? This is different.
There's a culture that makes bridges that way. Living Bridge, if you look it up, is really cool.
I think it's New Zealand that actually has a few. I'm not sure if it might be New Zealand that has bridges that they created first with scaffolding and then grew it and then took the scaffolding down. See, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love this. So the Picts, let me see if I can pull up the Picts. They would build their houses by weaving trees together, and the leaves. So these ancient trees in England had these giant banana leaf-like leaves. So then they would also fold the leaves into each other, and yeah, they'd also make these interesting, faces on their houses because they're living inside the living tree, which is just so cool. I mean, to live in a living tree, there's no nails or anything like that. I think that's just super awesome. I love that.
The people who make the bridges, what I love about them is that when you have, people who come and they see these bridges and they're amazed, they're just like, I don't get it. It's just a bridge. Because to them, it's just, normal.
Yeah, but it's a living bridge. That's like that. They built somewhat of a museum, and it was a series of trees. I think it was something like 110 maybe, but it was a series of trees that were in a circle, and they were woven and welded together. And according to the gentleman that was discussing it, as it grew taller, what would occur is all the different trees would grow into one single tree, and it would make like this massive cylinder, and you could build a house in the inside of it. It was so huge. It was awesome.
Dude, but this, right? We'll get 3D printing robots, and then they're going to build houses that look like this because they're just going to weave the house out of the material as it strings together. So you won't need bricks, and they'll just be super strong. They'll be the strongest buildings ever. That's what we need to move on from. Once the mastodons trample suburbia and replace it with these beautiful fields, then we'll have robot spiders, and everything will be right.
I'm going to have nightmares tonight for sure.
Couldn't a guy just itself could be a spider, obviously.
Couldn't a guy use different sound frequencies that create different shapes in order to construct your dwelling using this goat silk weirdo crap? Not that I'm advocating using goat silk. That's just weird to me. But
why is it Baphomet?
Starports were originally made out of. Who knows?
I mean, look at this. Like AI just made this. I mean, this is kind of the future, right? Like you get driftwood and pieces of wood, and then you prop up your tree, and you let your tree kind of grow into the thing. I mean, that's the future. And then mud and everything.
There's some cool real tree bridges out in like Cambodia and India and stuff that are pretty awesome. I've seen. Where they literally build them out of vines and they just keep growing.
I want to find an island. I want to float it about 60 feet above the air. And then I want to float another island and attach them with a living bridge. That would be amazing. Of course, it's a lot of woo-woo, but I'm just saying.
This was a success. I love this picture. Look good job, AI. Look at that. That's what we want. They're going to build a house and they're living in this giant house and it's just like a Akashic tree. That's pretty sweet. I mean, the thing is that this material, now it's not made by goats, it's made by yeast. So we're going to get to a point where all of these things are natural. I think that's the thing that people keep saying, oh, it's artificial. It's a goat silk. That's creepy. But really, if you had spiders that were giant, that'd be a lot creepier than just some goats in a lab.
Okay, you got me there.
Spider silk is one thing, but it's actually a bit of a meme where if you're like trying something scientific and it's really hard, what you do is you search the thing that you're trying to do and then you add chitin or chitosan after, and you'll find some weird study that's exactly what you need. It's hilarious.
Isn't that the material that like lets bugs levitate, fly, sort of thing?
It's what. Well, chitosan is like a precursor because we're actually really bad at making chitin, but you can get chitosan pretty easily. But yes, what mushrooms and bugs use.
Chitosan, how do I spell that?
It's like chitin, but S-A-N, I believe at the end. Chitosan.
Like chitin is in like K or C?
Right. That's what shellfish are made out of. I think actually that's what Paul Cook was saying is key to making the geopolymer.
This is what Roman concrete uses, and it seems like there's a lot of it in all of these ancient buildings, like the idea that they're growing crystal marble that's been shattered and they've added it into concrete.
Put that one up, brother.
Which one?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was muted for a second there.
Yeah,
I was talking to my brother in the room. I apologize.
This stuff is really interesting, and if there's any like science people watching right now, look into this.
Yeah, I've heard about the crushed shells in concrete before.
This is the secret ingredient. If anybody's got like a Slavic uncle who makes concrete that they pay people to break up years later because it's too strong, it's because they use seashells. I remember I had this uncle or second cousin or whatever you call him, but he would go off to the ocean and come back with a lot of seashells and he'd break it up and he'd do this in the middle of the night so that no one could see him doing it because that's what his father did. And they've been doing this literally since they moved here, and then centuries before that. That is the way the family secretly would do that. And they've been making concrete forever, and it's everyone always talks about how intensely strong it is, that they use these huge machines and they can never break it back up afterwards. So be very careful if you're getting this guy to do the job if you don't want to keep it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's different than the concrete that you see that has whole small shells in it that look like tiny clam shells. This is different. This is in powder form and it's mixed in as an ingredient in the concrete, like with cement and other agents. So yeah.
Elon wants to do a brick, right? Elon's nanotech brick. Over it. Nano is brick. Yeah, 10-cent bricks. He wants to build these 10-cent bricks that are supposed to be out of this like hyper foam. But they're really light, but they have a lot of structural integrity because they're connected.
Are they interlocking or?
It was a foam. So the foam, when it expands, it interlocks in similar ways to graphene, but it's not perfectly like graphene. It's more just like integral bonds.
Yeah, okay. You see there's a lip there. Yeah, so it's probably going to interlock. So that reduces the amount of skill necessary to build it quite a bit.
Yeah, true. You can just pour something through it. Let's see. Boring musk, boring brick. I want a microscope picture, like anything. Yeah, the material's an aerogel, so when it dries, it glassifies, but it also still has some weird plastic-like quality to it. And it's supposed to be kind of like the Lego, that you can stack them like into each other because they've got a lip as well. So that's pretty good.
Interesting. Wonder what the insulative properties are of it.
Dude, yeast though. I mean, you can do anything with yeast. This is a big thing. The what's that beer in Denmark that's popular? Carlsberg beer. Is that right?
I think there's a company making bricks out of mushrooms as well.
Nobel Prize. So the Carlsberg beer is interesting to me because the guy who made the 1999 recipe got the Nobel Prize, and it's because the yeast that they created. I don't know. What am I at? 1905.
I love that that wasn't even remotely the number you said.
I've been born so many times. So former Carlsberg Research Laboratory scientist receives Nobel Prize. Morton Meldal receives Nobel Prize in chemistry for the development of a click chemistry and bioorthogonal chemistry, a discovery which continues the long line of research from us, blah, 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 in yeast, purification of yeast. So the thing that's interesting is he can feed synthetic sugars and syrups to this yeast, and it will poop beer. And that is a miracle. And they give them the Nobel Prize for it. Now, I think it's terrifying, personally. I don't think this is a good thing. I'm not kidding. I think the idea that beer is made out of GMO syrups and that the Danish are behind it is like the weirdest conspiracy. Like, aren't they supposed to be all about organics and everything like that? It says right here, purification of yeast. We know what your people want to read. What's really going on here? But because of this, all of American beer, Budweiser and things like that, they've followed in suit, and they have this fake beer that is made from synthetic syrup yeasts. And I think that's crazy, right? And unless you get like some Mexican beers still are Reinheitsgebot.
It's only a matter of time, right? They took pure cane sugar out of a guy's Coca-Cola years ago. So now they're going to take, they're going to and replace it with this poisonous chemical sugar substitutes. And you can do the same thing with beer and spirits and wine and whatever they can.
Yeah, it's important to remember that Mexican Coca-Cola does use corn syrup now. People who, for the last 10 or 15 years, it's been using corn syrup. So people can't escape it. If you're trying to get Mexican Coca-Cola, sneak across the border, it's not working anymore. You're still drinking corn syrup and whatever the heck else is in Coca-Cola, which is a lot scarier.
Well, Coca-Cola, the diet stuff, since it's not super sticky when it dries, it makes really good cleaning solution.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm actually a big fan of this. I thought it was a joke when I first heard it, but Coca-Cola cleaning the toilet or something like that. If you ever have
it takes off all the stains.
If you have to clean a toilet, I'm not kidding. Like, this is for you at home. If your toilet has a stain in it, get a bottle of Coca-Cola and pour it into your toilet. I'm not kidding.
You just let it sit there for a bit.
Yeah, that's the answer. It's not a metaphor. That part's literal. I guess it's a metaphor too. What do you guys think? We almost got there to this thing. The SBF was meeting with senior White House officials shortly before FTX collapsed. This is kind of a weird nightmare, right? I mean, Sam Bankman-Fried
have a South Park clip we have to play before you get off this topic.
Do you have a photo of it? Or I don't want to play the whole sound probably, but we can show it.
It's on Cryptos RS YouTube channel. I think.
Pull it up. Do what you want. Do it while people talk. What do you guys think about Sam Bankman-Fried? I mean, and really, I think he's just some hippy-dippy kid, right? But like, it's the people he's meeting with. Isn't that kind of like, it seems like he's well placed.
I don't think he's going to be able to buy immunity from this one.
He's the what do you call it? He's the scapegoat. His whole life. He's the fall guy. He was always the fall guy. He's not the creative guy. He's not the get work done guy. He's the patsy. He's the face. Join the technician. Get on this show. Do we need to send you the link? I'll do that just in case.
I already asked Jeremiah. He said it's not his
he's working
specialty, but for tomorrow's Year of the Coil, he's definitely on, as will Gerald be back, and we will also have Matthew Rife on again.
Very good. Very good. I'm glad you got in touch.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Andres.
It's fine.
I was just saying I've been working all day getting my lab clean and set up for it, so we'll see.
I'm gonna check this out. So on September 8th, senior Biden advisor Steve Ricchetti, in previously unreported encounter, met with Sam Bankman-Fried. White House official familiar with the matter said the meeting was the latest in a handful of sessions, according to the report. Bankman-Fried had at least 3 other previously disclosed in White House visitor logs. How much you bet he was doing this to everybody? I mean, to Trump too. I'm assuming he's trying to get in the pockets.
White House, nonetheless. Like, it just shows how they're all criminals.
Right. I mean, money and laundering for sure, but crypto is interesting because you could almost pretend up until the last couple months, right before this happened, right? The SEC case with OdySee, SEC OdySee Libri case is the biggest. This is the biggest rocka. Oh man, they decided to say that any kind of crypto asset is a security because you could imagine that there might be a value associated with it eventually, which is not the truth. I mean, it's not the way it ever was before. You know, you used to have to like at least advertise it as such and say, okay, well, you made it a false security. But now they're saying, no, but in our opinion, it is a security. Well, okay, government, that's fun. Well, I dropped my email.
I think that scam, bankrupt, fraud was actually a plant that like they intentionally put in there to regulate and destroy the crypto market by how it's being played. You know, it's either that or Gary Gensler needs to be arrested. It's one or the other. Well, he needs to be arrested either way.
I like the conspiracy theory that they planted, you know, like they found a guy, you know, and maybe he for real, like I imagine he, you know, I've seen a lot of people like this. He probably meant well. Don't get me wrong. Like he probably also meant to make a lot of money. He thought everyone's gonna make a lot of money. Everyone's gonna have a lot of fun, you know? And they figured that was the perfect patsy. And then they got around him. And then, so the people that have been controlling him have been bank, you know, centric players that wanted to have an index of what's going on in crypto. And if you put a few $1 billion into crypto and you have the right publicity to get a few or triple the billions more from the rest of the population that's trying to get in on this get rich quick scheme. Because, you know, I mean, who knows how to make a commercial on YouTube, target people and make money better than people that already do that all the time. So they set this up. He gets a bunch of money. They get in and all of a sudden they can index crypto. They can see the, you know, about half of the transactions all of a sudden are theirs for a while. Any failed product they can invest in.
And then, but he was definitely a scammer from the beginning. He literally just made copies of everybody's, like, for instance, synthetic Bitcoin. Like, you deposit real Bitcoin and then they'd credit you synthetic Bitcoin on their exchange and then just steal and keep all of your original real crypto. And that's how it kind of worked out and scammed it. But for John Beert's question, my biggest confusion, his girlfriend, that much money, and that's his girlfriend. It's because she was the daughter of like one of the big wigs or something that like
the SEC, the current head of the SEC, which is doing the securities case about library, right? That is the people that decided what a security is. They're, you know, that's her father, right? And her father worked for him. It's either one or the other.
Her father was Gary Gensler's boss at some point.
That's what it is.
Still above him, yeah. And Gary Gensler's the one that's the head of the SEC.
That's a fun one. So I don't know. I mean, but it to me, it's like, yeah, they're trying to rip some people off, but really, they're not the big bad guys here. It seems to me there's a bigger set of bad guys, and they're like, oh, he got away with a few $100. The rest of the money disappeared. That's how you know. The rest of the money went to the people that really mattered and that knew this was going to happen at the beginning and set this up. And it was all part of this big plan to crush crypto. And they're like, we need to crush crypto. We need a lot of money to do it. I got $1 billion. You got $1 billion. Let's get $5 billion from patsies, and then we'll use it to destroy crypto. And then that way we'll buy into crypto. We'll own crypto for next time. And that's the only way to destroy it, is to own it.
So I'm SBF, founder and CEO of FTX. My accidental theft of our customers' life savings to create a giant over-leveraged Ponzi slush fund for myself is a tragedy that should have never happened. And to all those affected, I want to say I am deeply sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. Oops. Sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Pretty
I'm
real, man.
deeply sorry. Heh. Sorry. Oopsie doopsie.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Yeah, right. And the Chinese Binance.
Some breaking news in the case against disgraced crypto founder Sam Bankman-Fried. He was just released on $250 million bond.
Sorry. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's pretty good. I like it. I don't think that South Park
Pretty
is
good,
made that thread. That's the guy. We should figure out the who's it? It's Ricky.
CoffeeZilla there and CZ of Binance for the two guest appearances. Pretty good.
Yeah, I mean they're going to work with China, and so that's like more and more clear. They're setting up for what's the replacement? The Chinese government and their money that's going to be used to buy the last of it. They're going to do the secondary crash with China. They won't even need to do the scandal the same way. They'll just jack their money because it's China. So that's kind of scary. I mean, we're about to see, but that's also interesting. So anybody who has any crypto left, you're special, I think is the deal.
I've got about 2,000 left. It's down 85%.
Wow. Yeah, you got to be careful with that. I mean, the crypto space, they say it's disastrous, but do you think the future of crypto is as dark as some people think? I mean,
No,
yes.
no, it's still the future.
Yes.
Well, the reason why is because we've created you can't really have something in the modern world that is competing with what we've come to define as currency, because the idea behind crypto was to make a finite supply, but you can't make a finite supply to something someone can just make up. Like how many cryptocurrencies are there now ever since?
Yeah, but are they all equal? That's the problem. So many people.
Well, essentially, yes, they
will survive.
And no, you could maybe get people to come to some sort of consensus of like, okay, let's use this cryptocurrency, but you have so many competing interests there, especially in the Eastern countries of like, oh shit, we don't want people actually using this, so we're just going to ban the cryptocurrency, or we're just going to make a government sponsored cryptocurrency instead. So that's a way to just get it into a new form of fiat currency where the government can just abuse as much as they want to. But like, oh, it's just on blockchain now. It doesn't.
You know what the Panama Papers are?
Oh yeah, Panama Papers were key. Like that's one of the most undercovered stories of this decade, really.
So it's, if you think about it, crypto, it doesn't have to be without assets. There are, cryptos that have, assets. There are crypto-backed assets, asset-backed crypto, physically asset-backed cryptocurrencies, gold, silver. You've also got ones backed by hours of labor. People will say the amount of hours of the electricity that come out of these wind turbines, you get a certain amount of the money that energy is worth, which is a kind of a futures trading. And if you go back far enough, what you'll find is that cryptocurrencies existed for thousands of years. People have always used encryption in order to hold on to an asset. You might have two sticks that are part of one piece of wood. The Vikings would put them together, and if the grains matched, you could tell that they were from the same sticks. Tally sticks. So people have had encrypted currencies for a long time. And what's the value, right? Why would you do it? So you might have a contract that says, I, Andreas, own this, piece of moldavite. I don't know. I got a piece of moldavite right here. Do you guys like moldavite? Do you like moldavite? Well, Tim Pool gave me that. How about that? So
I
deal with it. Deal with it. All right. Here's the deal about the moldavite. I, Andreas, sell this piece of moldavite to Bernard. It's a written up contract. It's very specific. That takes a lot of work. But it could be as easy as, I am a person and I have the right to trade, and so does he. We all are universally similar. So in a free society when anyone can trade anything, then there shouldn't be any restrictions to that contract being exchanged by Kurt. So all of a sudden I can make a piece of paper that's a encrypted piece of paper, that's QR code that says it's worth this piece of moldavite, and then BurnEye can exchange it with Kurt, and it doesn't matter that he's BurnEye, it doesn't matter that he's Kurt. That's the importance of a currency. It's free trade between two mutually agreeing and free parties, and it could be any party, two or more, right? So what happened with the Panama Papers was that the former Soviets, like KGB officers, Putin, etc., had figured out ways of siphoning off wealth from their state into private corporations. And once it was in the hands of the corporations, it was in the hands of whoever owned the corporation or was in charge of the corporation. And that was not always clear on paper. You could look at it and you could see that there was maybe a minority shareholder who owned 1% of the company. This is how things have been done forever. You look at JP Morgan. JP Morgan only owned 9% of Morgan Stanley Company, 9% of his own name. Right. So just for perspective of how little you don't of your own name to be a front, that's how he got. That's why his name is important.
Yeezy just was a great example of that lately. The Kanye West turned Yee, and how he talked about all of that, and the Yee shoe by Adidas and that whole contract debacle.
Right. And the artist formerly known as Prince. Shout out to anybody who's ever been to Minnesota or liked music. But Prince, he changed his name to a symbol in order to evade contract law, and it worked, right? Because Prince was a created entity. So he was able to evade the created entity. It's brilliant. So in the Panama Papers, they find a bunch of these corporations that are seated all around these islands, right? There's islands, if you want to see, there's islands over here, islands over there, bunch over here in the Caribbean. Okay, Seychelles, islands everywhere. So then there's these corporations, and they're owned by a guy who has 2% of the corporation. But then the contract or the charter of the corporation says that whoever's the majority share owner, whoever has the shares, they're the important ones. But do you have physical briefcases with shares? Well, sometimes in the 80s, the KGB would fly with cocaine and diamonds and guns and with briefcases with paperwork. But digital very quickly in the early 90s became the way to do it. So CIA, KGB, all these guys, they're using cryptocurrency in order to exchange assets, data, information, receipts, everything like that, going back a long time ago. And this is the thing. When you pick up the two briefcases, what's inside of it, it says you own 80 or 90% of the company. So then you can walk in and you can pull out all the money in the bank and you can leave because your name is not on any paperwork, but you have the paperwork. And that's why cryptocurrency is so important, because you could have the paperwork and it could be exchanged and it can be tied to real assets. So that's the future. I'm pretty sure we need to accept that at some level. But
fully with that, the smart contract aspect of it is what will free humanity for any citizen of the world to exchange with any other citizen of the world without being taxed by the banks.
But that's also what the CIA does to avoid being taxed by the banks. And so it's important to remember there's like the dark side as well, right? Cryptocurrencies are not all it's cracked up to.
Own the banks, though. Goldman Sachs, CIA, come on.
The real danger and where the part that's dark and probably hopeless is treating them as if they are actual investments and in and of themselves. Like we can, as a currency or a means of exchange, there's obvious advantages there, but in saying that you can just pick one and this thing that I'm going to put my money into is going to have relative value in the future is one of the stupidest types of risk that you could assume. So in that sense, like everybody,
Wind Scared, I sent you a link in your Signal messages, by the way.
Yeah, it's still the Wild West right now, right? It's a very new technology, but say 10 years from now, I guarantee it's going to be where the majority of the economy and like monetary value of the world is exchanged. Just like you pointed out, there's 30,000 different cryptos right now, and maybe 10 or 20 of them will last. other than all the government ones that they're now creating.
Right. I think the thing they're going to create value. So, for instance, you think about like a singularity token, singularity AGI token. This token has an interesting kind of futures value to it because what it is AI getting paid in AGI token. So then they can exchange that for AI can use that later on as it accumulates wealth to buy a city or something like that. And you can imagine how quickly AI can garner wealth, buy some land in the middle of an uninhabitable place, and turn it into a perfect city for AI, right? And this could happen very quickly. And there's other examples that aren't so nefarious. What about Native Americans who have their own cryptocurrencies? There are examples of this. The Cherokee have their own, the Lakota have their own cryptocurrency, and there could be in Ethiopia and in Botswana, there's their own crypto. Nigeria is working on the cryptocurrency in order to get away from the government inflation problems. Every step along the way, the banks are trying to stop it, make it illegal.
Didn't Venezuela's government try to make an oil-backed cryptocurrency, and nobody's on?
I mean, the enigma that is Venezuela, you have to remember that the wars that the CIA used to fight against everybody are few and far between now. So they've really gone hard on Venezuela, and they took out their leadership, left them with a bus driver, and they're so integral into the control of Venezuela. It's really a tragedy. But this also makes it easier for them to buy oil from them because, like, oh, you're free now, huh? Now you feel free? Okay, now you can sell our terrorist adjacent groups the oil. Cool. Now we're still making money off of you, and it's even easier because you're doing all the sweat work anyway. It sucks to be Venezuela. I love Venezuela. Who's better, Prince or Michael Jackson? This is like
I've got to take off. I got to drive my brother-in-law to the airport right now. So I will
that's
see
fair.
you all on the next
We got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to show before you disappear, Bernie, the link to you. Go to Crypto Alchemist and subscribe, and also to BurnEye, the science guy. I did it again. Yeah. I did the U and the E because Bernie. I'm sorry. BURN.
All good. I should have spelled it properly.
You're just a sweet Canadian, aren't you?
Tomorrow we're doing the Year of the Coil episode with Gerald will be back for that, along with Matthew Rife and hopefully JP and a few others. And Saturday I've got a live event for New Year's Eve at with some DJs. And yeah, thank you all, and catch you guys on the next one.
Beautiful, man.
See you, bro. Take care, Bernie.
See you, Bernie.
Well, yeah.
West Reset, Frankie. Got to say that. My brother from Calgary. We're going to be doing some great work checking out the Heart House and seeing if it's haunted. But yeah, Frankie's channel. Make sure you show that at the end because he does a lot of good old videos showing the old world, mud flood, stuff like that.
Yeah, Frankie, if you have anything you want to pull up, or if you want to send me a link, I'll play it.
Wow, put a guy on the spot. Oh wow. Yeah, give me a second here and I'll dredge up something. Yeah, sure. Just
in the meantime, I'll ask Kurt again. What do you think about real value then? So you think it's not, and it's all just replaceable with, it's like a girl on the corner next to 1,000 other girls. So what is real value?
Real value in terms of currency or just in the human experience, I guess.
Is this Eli Peck? Oh, I'm sorry. Is this Wind Spirit? Is this Mystic Circuits? Did he make it? That's pretty awesome. I'm asking Kurt right now about real value in terms. So we're talking about cryptocurrency. And it's like the future. So some people are thinking cryptocurrency is the future of value. But what do you think it is? What do you think the real value in the future is?
Me? Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good.
Because you jumped in.
It's all good. So, and how currency is our best method of trying to create some sort of store of value without it actually having any sort of inherent value. And that causes a lot of problems naturally. Right now, our current fiat, I think, is destined to fail in the long run. We've only really had, different economies have experimented with fiat in the past. I can't give you various examples, but it wasn't the predominant currency. Mostly it was, at least over the past few centuries, it was a metal-based currency, which for the most part, it did bring about a certain sense of stability, and we got away from that. Well, because the attractive part of fiat is you can essentially create just a you can create just such a system where your government just jerks off all the time and can do whatever it wants.
Right.
And we've seen that we could not have shut everything down for the pandemic in the way that we did if we did not have fiat currency. And in my mind, I think that's a very bad thing. We're starting to see exactly what kind of asset bubble that created, because you can just print so much money out of that. You can just say, oh, here you go. And that creates a distortion effect over the real value. And then you get things like 12% inflation over foods and necessary commodities in the economy.
But have we had 12% inflation over food before, like, last 100 years, you think? Like, is that a thing?
In the 80s, which is also
Right.
very briefly after the time when we adopted fiat currency. We adopted fiat currency in the 60s. So it probably could not have happened that way in the 80s unless we had the means to create such loose financial conditions. So how that translates to creating a store of value, it's important to recognize that the only thing currency is trying to do is be a placeholder, even if that is, in some sense, precious metals. But the thing about precious metals instead of fiat is that, yes, we do assign value to it in some sort of psychological sense, but we also haven't figured out how to manipulate it. The way we've achieved or recognized value in terms of precious metals is that we haven't figured out alchemy. Like, you can't hack this. You cannot duplicate this in any way, sort of shape or fashion. And that's why I'm accepting it, because I know that nobody else can duplicate this. And so you could like, in that way, that came from nature, and nature provided limitations there.
But
so,
also, you can get more. So, like, corn is worth corn, so I can get more. You can grow more corn. You can bring me more corn, right? So money started out from a
more of
you
an
generated.
expiration date on that.
But that's like crypto. You generate it yourself, you know. But yeah, as a expiration date.
So I guess if you want to trace back to where does value come from, well, essentially, what keeps the party going? What keeps this whole evolution of the human experiment going? So that generally is where value comes from. If you want, you could have.
Yeah, I feel like there'd be a different value for someone from, like, a snow island versus, like, Polynesian island. Like, if you live in a place where there's no food and scarcity, you're gonna value things differently than someone who's like, well, I got everything I need, but I want this, you know.
Yeah, your means of value. There's certain aspects where you choose what you value. In Western society, we're probably a little bit anti-tribalistic, so we don't value the exchange of direct goods as much as probably would be healthy for our nature, I would say. But we're not going around trading buckskins with each other, which that sounds kind of fun, I think. But
Cool.
yeah, in societies where that actually keeps you warm, you know, that is real, actual value. So some value does come from nature. Some of it, and we are at least partial reflections from nature. But how, in terms of how we're experimenting with currency, it's important to recognize that natural value is really far removed from everything we try to experiment when it comes to storing that value. And we could talk about assets and why assets have value and how they have more intrinsic value than currency itself. But yeah, and what does a company do that's good in society that actually creates value, and why do companies that don't create value just go under? Because they're just shit and they're actually a drag on people. That's a good example is probably Carvana. Oh, it's just a bad idea. It's a shit company, you know. Carvana was essentially the cryptocurrency of the stock market. It's just such an awful business model and ran terribly. They bought so much inventory, but that's an example of, like, okay, at the end of the day, like, companies have to do something valuable or they're just destined to fail eventually in the long run. And there's so much turnover in that regard. But yeah, that's a good bullet point, I guess.
I mean, it's interesting. I looked for a second at the Strauss-Howe generational theory. I was with the fourth turning, and this idea that they take your wealth. First, they give it to you, though. So there's like 100-year kind of seculum period, right? And some generations are, fat on the cow, and the others are used to. They take the wealth from that. So you give a generation of really great. Free economy and lots of opportunity. They generate the wealth. You hyper tax their children, and then the next generation you do it again.
That's that's what we're going through. That's why we're not going to get a return on our Social Security, because the relative return on it is going to be just ass and dog poo. I hope everyone in our generation just realizes that. Like, a lot of people early on in Social Security, they got large percentage returns on what they were able to withdraw. And it's not an investment. It's just a pool of money that's getting drawn from the current working class.
Right. Well, it's interesting because you say that. So earlier, you're like looking for examples of a fiat, let it be done, right? In Latin, let it be done money system, a currency, not based on gold and silver. And you were trying to come with an example, and I was trying not to say it because I was like, I probably don't want to talk about the Nazis in the 30s. But you know what? The economy of the Nazis was a fiat economy, and so some people will herald this. They're like, "Oh, this is great," because it really built up Germany for the war. Yeah, it did. It built up the military-industrial complex and took the money away from the average person who already had been robbed, right? Because you had wheelbarrows of wealth. So it empowered the state. Now, very few of you are going to think that that's a good idea to empower the state. And I think that's the most important lesson to take away from a fiat economy, is that the fiat economy makes it possible for the state to accumulate the wealth because they can play the game however they want. And so they can print money, buy your economy, crash it with the PR in the newspapers, buy it again, and monopolize control over the entire economy. So you can never really decentralize the economy, right?
Sorry.
That's it.
the kind of currency that you use is going to incentivize creating more of that currency. So if your currency is salt, that's going to incentivize people going and grabbing a whole bunch of seawater and turning it into salt. If your currency is metal, it's going to encourage you to mine stuff. If it's corn or whatever food item, then it's going to encourage you to do more farming. And if it's nothing,
yeah, I'm a fan of nothing. That's just my opinion.
Nothing from nothing leaves nothing.
Now, if we
something.
Get down to really deep philosophical roots, like obviously if you have a conversation with normal people and you're like, I don't think we should have money, like they're gonna look at you like you're insane.
Right. What's up, Matt? Good to have you. Think Hunter is angry he was sent to Ukraine and not invited to the luxury condo to smoke and shag with the blockchain nerds. Yeah, I think Hunter is upset. That is probably what went on there. Sorry, Kurt.
No, you're good. What was I saying? Oh yeah, about no money, no currency. Ideally, I
don't know what you want, Steer, but I'll take your 50. Send it to me, please. Go to exertus.com and donate. I need your money.
Like we're very, very much programmed to think in a certain way and to keep the current consensus going. We're to keep the dialectic as it is. Or at least keep the majority of it going the way it's supposed to be going. So if we analyze really the roots of what we need, we need Maslow's hierarchy. That's the only things that we really need, and we can achieve all of those things without actually having currency. And it's so hard to communicate to that to our current system because our current system is so worker based, and we don't. The only time you need a worker-based system is if the central goal of the zeitgeist, I guess, is just expansionism. If you don't eventually the problem with expansionism is eventually you run out of room. So we can get along without expansionist economies. We can have good an economy based on trade of goods. It really actually can happen. And the thing is. I love Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard says essentially we create the reality that we live in, and that is another thing that's so hard to communicate to people too. Like, oh, what? We create reality? Well, yeah, look at that. That's a clock that we're looking at right now. Like, how did that get erected 500 feet in the air? It's because somebody used their imagination and made it happen. That's something that should not be there in nature. We have such divine, I'll say, divine power to actually construct the world that we live in and create the systems in which we interact, in which we define what is good. So we probably can actually do that without our current conception of currency. It's just we've been wanting so much expansionism that's been hard to really see it that way. So now, like, personally, I probably lean more towards anarchism, even though, like, a lot of people just think of, Children of the Corn when they think of anarchy. Like, no, I think a really more refined definition of what is anarchy, it's like, no, it's just questioning your hierarchy and what is justified and what you need into it. And we have so much excess that we haven't realized what we need there. So I think a lot of anarchist thought has been overlooked because we've been trained to overlook it. A lot of the more intelligent concepts out there have been stuffed in the ground because you should just go to the factory and you should work. That's what it comes down to.
Right. Speaking of the factory, New West, right? What is this video we're watching here, Frankie? This is amazing.
This is some old footage of Toronto that I found on an archive, Canadian archives.
Wow.
This was taken in it escapes me, 1923, 1925, something like that, just after World War II, or World War I, basically.
1928 says, yeah.
Oh, 28, there you go. So, yeah, and the thing that I love about these old video footage, if I could find it, is not only the old architecture, which just boggles a guy's mind, but it's the daily comings and goings of the people.
John Burt, thank you. Dollary dues make the world go round. Not, yes, I have a kangaroos on property. That's pretty sweet. Get some footage of that. I want to see that.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, the people walking around. Yeah.
Yeah, the clothing, the cars they drove, the street cars. I love old trains, so I try to get footage of old trains or old street cars. And, it's just, that's what I love about the old videos, is you get to see not only the massive grandeur of the architecture, but right down to just the, for lack of a better term, the common folk. But a lot of the stuff that you see here, like, this is just, like,
wow, yeah, castles.
Yeah, it's a castle, but this is a private residence. This is this here's the university. But that other previous building was a private residence. It was the premier or somebody's home, or the governor general or somebody. So it's amazing to me, the labels that they stamp on these incredible buildings. And then like I said, juxtaposed to that is just the everyday people just going about their day. And sometimes
all the
look
cars,
on their face.
Cars.
Yeah,
people don't realize how many cars there were. Yeah.
Sorry to just jump in here, guys. I'm not
What's
sure
up,
if you... Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Mike.
How are you? Yeah, not too far from where I live. It's just outside of Rockwood, Ontario. They have an old streetcar sanctuary. It's like a museum they have a whole bunch of 1900s streetcars and stuff that are actually still operational. And he's actually got this closed circuit track on the property, and you could take a ride in one of these cable cars from, I believe it was like 1905, this one cable car he had, and it's still operational, and you could take a ride on it. I took my daughter there a couple of years ago to go see it. It's pretty amazing, some of the old stuff that they had lying around. And the fact that it was still operational, too, was even better. So...
Yeah, there's... well, see, the thing is, you're showing a video from my channel, but actually the majority of my content is boots on the ground, where I explore Calgary and the old world buildings in Calgary. Oh yeah, this is one where I found pavement lighting. But anyway, this summer I'm going to head to Heritage Park, which in 1950, after they tore out the last streetcar cable cars here in Calgary, they went to just buses, right? Just like everywhere else. But meanwhile, since I think the late 60s, early 70s, there's what they call a living heritage theme park here in Calgary called Heritage Park. And it's set up like an old-timey turn of the last century village.
Yeah,
And
that's the way this place is too, similar to that.
Yeah, and they've put in the old streetcar line in there that goes around the park and makes quite a few stops. And they put in a couple of the old stations from Calgary onto Heritage Park. So this summer, I plan on going out to Heritage Park and taking a bunch of footage, just doing basically a walkabout, boots on the ground in Heritage Park, because it's an amusement park, but it's also kind of an indoctrination center in the sense that here's the narrative. Right. This is what it was like. Cowboys and Indians, the Wild West. You know, then the Iron Horse came in and opened up the West. Like the narrative in Alberta is the same as the narrative in the West of the United States.
Yeah, my dad's father worked for TTC for almost 30 years. So he used to do all the track repairs in downtown Toronto from about 45 to 1975. In that time frame, he was working.
Oh, okay. So he probably would have worked for CP and CN, depending on who the contract they had. Yeah. I had lots of my family that worked for CP, Canadian Pacific Railroad.
Okay. I have actually have his hard hat.
Uncles.
Yeah, I got his TTC hard hat in my storage locker, so that thing's like 70 years old.
Yeah, that old stuff's awesome. But yeah, I love finding this old footage because a lot of people don't think of, I mean, this is different because this isn't Nevada, but I try to focus on Canadian stuff because a lot of people don't necessarily think of Canada as having a lot of these massive old world buildings and this old world tech and infrastructure, except for maybe some pockets within the region, like everybody knows Toronto and Montreal. But, you know, a lot of people haven't even heard of Calgary, Alberta. So I try to head out there and shoot stuff that's in the older parts of the city that exemplify a lot of what we look into in our community. But at the same time, I like to surf online and find old video footage that shows what it actually was like in the day-to-day lives of people back then.
Dude, I mean, that's amazing. Oh, I got it. I already muted it for you. I'm 2 hours deep and I got someone here, so I have to get going. But let me share where they can get your content. And just in case you guys didn't get that is the New West, New West Reset, New West channel right here, New West Reset, and you can get subscribed. You have to definitely start to pump this up, guys. Let's give him a few extra 100 tonight, so he can get to 1,000, and then that way he can get promoted, so that more people can see his research. Some interesting stuff.
I really
here.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. And once again, a big shout out to Bernie for turning me on to you guys and for inviting me on here tonight. And thanks to you for letting me come on and jibber jabber. Appreciate it.
Well, we'll definitely do it again. You know, you're always welcome back. MK Canada Thursdays, and I think tomorrow's coil research. Mike, you're going to be there tomorrow for the coil. You're the coil.
Yeah, I should. Yep.
Very good.
Anything that involves lightning and zippity zappy stuff, you know, Mike's going to be there. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I had some pretty cool test results the other night, so I'll share that with you guys tomorrow night.
Epic. That's going to be exciting. Also, make sure you guys listen to Kurt. I want you to listen to Kurt. Kurt's got amazing things to say. And also his music's beautiful. I love The Golden Ratio. This is a really good song. Your new album is really good. The architecture of all knowledge is just super deep, super amazing, fun to listen to. Get yourself a decent stereo. He mixed it right. I remember the other day he's talking to me. He's like, I just maxed out my DAW. My computer's freaking out because I'm using so many different instruments and plugins, and the music is so big. So just so you know, it's like, it's ethereal, it's a soundscape, it's great. And he plays real guitar, real instruments. It's, you know, if you want real organic, decent music, Kurt, American Time Machine, amazing stuff.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, we have to have a whole other discussion. Yeah, you used AI in your stuff and your modeling. Yeah, your synthesizer modeling, and that's it's really interesting because we can bookmark that, and I want to say, you know, we can really, AI can assist art in a way. I think that's the best way to put it. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And really, I've been trying to go down the depths, the underbelly of melody, and really. I think melody is really underutilized in a lot of electronic music, and there's just so much experimentation you can do there. And now, and I'm trying, I created a key. Some people played around with this using the Fibonacci sequence. But if you use 7 tones or 8 tones, and there's a way you can do it, and you can produce some interesting sounds there. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of these free things. So Spicy Guitar is a open source, free, physically modeled acoustic guitar synthesizer. It sounds a lot like a real guitar. Actually, it's not perfect, but you can bend it. And the more you study physical modeling, you can learn how guitars respond, and you can kind of get a better one. And there are expensive ones out there that aren't free, right? Like I think it's called Swam or Moto. I think Swam or something like that. Is it Swam? I forget. Or is it Piantech? Piantech has the good one. I thought Piantech did a really good job. So Piantech has really good piano physical modeling synthesis, but they also have, where's the guitar one they just did? It just came out, right? It's classical guitar. It was really impressive. So they're doing a lot of work with, they record guitars at all different heats and atmospheres and room sizes. And then they're studying the actual waves that are being produced. And then they're writing algorithms that can produce those waves so that it produces a real, not digital sample, but a sound that is curved, a shaped sound wave that sounds just like a real guitar. And so another really awesome thing is Odin 2, which is a free, open source, polyphonic 24 voice beast of a synthesizer. And with this, you can shape all kinds of waveforms. If you're interested in making music, I've got it set to 432, and then I'll have a 417 because Kurt brought that up, and a 396 or something, so that it bleeds together, but you can have as many voices as you want. And I was listening to Aphex Twin's Didgeridoo from 1992. If you haven't listened to Aphex Twin's Didgeridoo album, it's amazing. I know he spent like a week or something creating the didgeridoo waveform to do a false didgeridoo. And it's really interesting I don't know if I can find like a didgeridoo waveform, but they're basically, you're not going to see it here. You can kind of see here. It goes, woo, woo, right? So there's a certain curvature that it follows. And it's interesting how he was able to create a way, something that kind of looked like this that pulls up and down and creates a perfect waveform. And yeah, so I don't know. I've been studying waveforms a lot recently. That I hope is useful. If you're interested in that stuff, get Odin 2. Definitely a really useful free synthesizer. All the best stuff is free. All right. Oh, yeah. And I said it earlier, but get it anyway. Cardinal is this really sweet VST modular synthesizer. So what it is you can plug in a bunch of pedals and things together, and it builds a giant rack. And it's pretty amazing. So, all right. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't say go to Tartary Nova. TartaryNova.com. Buy my merch. Watch our videos. Enjoy the Discord. Okay, cool. All right. I love you guys. Peace and love. See you next time.
Bye, Andres.
Good. Canada is a country. Waves of people came to this country, were welcomed by the folks who have lived here for millennia, the First Nation. And built this society with waves of people fleeing religious persecution, fleeing tyranny, fleeing to try and build a better life for themselves here than they had back home. Whether it's folks fleeing from world wars or fleeing from civil wars, these people always want the same thing: to be able to live in peace, to raise their families, create a better future for themselves and their communities. And that is what generations created, this extraordinary diverse society we have. Now, Canada remains one of the only countries in the world where citizens are, by and large, positively inclined. And one of the reasons we are that way is because Canadians have confidence in our history.
Kurt,
Yo.
still here.
Yo.
Is this going to be like our bonus segment?
Sure.
I just wanted to wait till the outro to just thank you, Andres, for having me on and say goodnight to all you fellers.
Thanks,
night,
man.
bro.
Thanks for being here,
Appreciate it.
Frankie. And we're going to do it soon again. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow, the next day, and then definitely Thursday if you're free. And yeah, we'll do some more stuff. We'll talk about Toronto. It's good to meet you.
Is this where we do the
that'd be great. I'd
bloopers?
be down with it. And it was good to meet you guys. Yeah, all of you. Thank you. And you guys are welcome on my show anytime. I do live streams as well. So.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, I'd love to. Anytime. We're happy to join. Cool. Thanks.
All right. Have a good night. Thanks again, fellas.
Peace.
Cheers.
What about you, Simon? What are you thinking about? It's the bonus content.
Oh, generally not much. I just
We got
go
a
with the
new
flow.
member. Let's bring it. Hey, let's bring it. You became a member. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. See, all the people that dropped off. That's the thing. People drop off because they didn't know that there's going to be some bonus content.
You're still live.
Bernie, welcome to the bonus content. We just
You're
played
still live, so I'm gonna end it now. Come here.